I remember the day like it was yesterday. As a 13-year-old middle child of 3, I took my peacemaker responsibilities very seriously. So, greeting mom after work was my job. But really, I did it because I could see that being a small business owner in the construction industry was just as hard on her as an owner as it was on my dad. Now, I'm also a latchkey kid, so I grew accustomed to mom being home at 5 p.m. But on this day, it was 8 p.m. And as I stood looking at mom, standing at the door, looking sharp in her business casual best, and that hair helmet of hers perfectly in place. To this day, she hates when we call her hair that. I noticed she was carrying my dad's jacket, his briefcase, and his uneaten lunch. And after gently setting those items down on the stairs in front of us, she looked at me and said, I don't know how I'm supposed to tell you and your sisters this, so I'm just gonna come out and say it. Dad planned on taking his life today, but instead he drove himself to the hospital. Thank God. He had a nervous breakdown. My heart began to beat uncontrollably from fear. Dad wanted to die? What's a nervous breakdown? But before I could even ask a question, she looked at me and said, "You can tell no one. If people find out, they will think he is crazy and won't want to work with him. We could lose everything." But what I heard in between those beats of my nervous heart were, if you're an adult and you're struggling, keep it a secret, especially at work, because it could ruin you. That message 13-year-old me learned on that day shaped me. And I carried it with me well into my 30s, after years of hiding my own battle from anxiety and depression. Because just like Dad, I had a lot to lose as a professional. You see, on the outside, I had it all together. I was traveling across the globe consulting companies on how to change their environments to better the health of their people and their business. I was in the midst of completing my PhD, managing to hit the gym every day at 5 a.m. and running 2 marathons a year. Oh no, I was crushing it. And because of that in my mind, I thought, I could figure this mental health stuff out. I got it. But on the inside, let me tell you, that story, it was different. Which is why one Saturday afternoon, after a long week of a toxic work environment and high work demands that exacerbated my anxiety, I sat on my couch and thought to myself, I could go into the garage, turn on the car, and let the engine run. Here's the thing, mental health, it's really complicated. It's also really messy. And the solution, although we like to think that it's about me or my dad, it's actually about we. We, in the form of the environments that shape us, such as our families, and if they support us or not. We, in the expectations that are set upon us based on the color of our skin or the countries that we're born into. And we, in the workplaces that we report to, which is my focus for today, because when they're toxic, they contribute to anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, and suicides. 236. That's the number of work-related suicides in 2021. I'd argue those are underrepresented. I'd also argue that one work-related suicide is too many. The U.S. Surgeon General, he agrees, which is why in 2022, he reiterated what we have known for years about the impact work has on the mental health of people and asked all workplaces, regardless of size or industry, to reimagine their environments for the better. Yes, suicide prevention, mental health awareness in the workplace, those things, as I trip, are really important. But if we are not addressing the toxic workplace practices that do exist, somebody like myself, right, what I learned all those years ago, that's what I'm going to revert to keep myself safe. So, how do you know if your workplace is toxic? Have you ever had a coworker or manager bully or manipulate you? But you kept coming to work because who's paying the bills? Have you ever sacrificed your personal time, working long hours, only to never receive that thank you, that promised promotion, right? That job well done. But you didn't dare open your voice out of fear you'd lose your job. Might you be the bully and not realize it, and also can't quite figure out why you have such high turnover in your workplace? I don't believe I've ever been the bully, but I've certainly been the recipient of one. I've also sacrificed my personal time, worked long hours. Maybe you or someone you know has too. The good news is that we have a way forward. There's always a way forward. Now, I don't promise to have all the answers, but I do have an action framework that's designed to help you lean into what the U.S. Surgeon General invited all of us to do to change our workplaces for the better. It's informed by research and best practices, but the best part of this framework, my dad, he used every single action item that's within it to change his work environment for the better throughout the 20 years following his mental health crisis. The result, he created a place people wanted to be a part of. His profits soared, and his stress, that became manageable. The reason I stand here today sharing his story, his successes, and this framework with you is so that you never have to experience what he did on that day all those years ago. Now, because we have our workshop set up for us later this afternoon to go into every aspect of the action framework, I want to at least start by sharing the A, the C, and the T. A, acknowledge and assess. From a me standpoint, Dad had to acknowledge that the business was running him, yet he didn't know how to voice that. I had to acknowledge that after years of broken promises and manipulation, it was time to move on. From a we standpoint, we have to acknowledge that no matter how great we think our workplaces are, we're seeing it through one lens. Your employees, they're afraid to use their voices. Their boundaries are being dismissed. And bullying and manipulation, it is still happening today. However, if you're sitting in your chair, there might be one of you that's thinking, well, that girl up there's crazy. We are good. Our environment, we got it. And I want to challenge you with the second part of that A, assess it. But you have to do it through boots on the ground employee feedback, not surveys. The employee voice, it's a tried and true method that we have lost sight of. Yet the voice is just too important to ignore. They hold the answers to many of the problems that you're trying to solve for. And by getting into the day-to-day with them, hearing their concerns, welcoming their ideas for solutions, and then bringing them in to actually make the change happen, you're igniting the C, which is communication to connect, and both building and strengthening the T, which is trust. It's interesting, no matter how many times I stand up here and talk about the importance of the employee voice, never seems to win the innovation award. It's almost as if we think it has to be really hard and really expensive in order for it to work. But I can stand here in confidence and tell you that if you put that employee voice on repeat, You will experience that profitability that will soar because of their commitment to you. Don't forget, Dad, he agrees. He experienced it firsthand. You know, as I was preparing for this speech, I had a chance to ask him what he remembered about that day all those years ago. His response, that I was brave enough to act, but not just for you, your mom, or your sisters, for the employees and their families who dedicated themselves to making our business great. But then he said to me, Colleen, don't forget, you were brave too. With that, I'd like to invite you to reflect on how you're interacting with your employees today and identify one small area that you can act on that will have an impact on the me and the we. Thank you.